Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with David Finkelstein, BDEX's founder and CEO. Happy New Year, David. I know this is our second episode back for the new year, so it's kind of over now, but we're only 9 days in. Anything new?
I don't know. I already feel like we're kicking off the new year like with a bang. So I'm excited about getting into 2025. Besides getting food poisoning earlier this week, which kind of sucked, work-wise, I feel like things are going really well, and it's only the 9th of the year. So I'm kind of excited about 2025.
It's going to be a good year, and this is going to be a great episode. We have a really great guest. We're thrilled to welcome on Xveris Media's Director of Analytics. It's Charles Lai. He's the head of the analytics department at one of the top mid-sized media agencies in the U.S. And as an agency focused on strategic planning and execution of advertising campaigns, Xveris uses data extensively for campaign design, optimization, and evaluation. I'm going to bring him in. Welcome to the show, Charles.
Hi, thank you, Jessie. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, Charles. We're excited to have you join us today on the podcast, and we're going to let you kick it off and give our listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So why don't you give everybody a little bit of background about yourself and what led you to become the Director of Analytics at Xveris Media and what you guys are doing for your customers.
Sure. First, I want to just tell the audience a bit about Xveris. We are based in Los Angeles. We're the type of advertising agency that does strategic planning, media buying, media execution, analytics and reporting, and pretty much everything except for generating creative content. And we're also a full funnel agency that runs upper funnel branding ads as well as conversion driving lower funnel ads. And we run on all channels from traditional ones like TV, radio, out of home, and also digital ones like Facebook, TikTok, or YouTube. And we use our data to inform decisions on every aspect of what we do. We could be using consumer behavior data, attitudinal, competitor data, campaign performance, CRM, and third-party measurement data. So as far as how I came to where I am at Xveris, I joined Xveris about 7 years ago when we were in our startup stage. And at that time, they were looking for someone with deep data and analytics expertise to help build their analytics department from the ground up. And I had done exactly that in a previous role, having developed and managed a new analytics team for Merits Research on the West Coast. And I think most people probably don't know, but Merits Research was a very old market research firm that was around since the 70s. And it was known for its very strong and well-resourced marketing sciences team that helped me hone my analytics expertise during my 12 plus years there. But I grew tired of the research industry and actively looked for a way to get into advertising, which I was very interested in. And Xveris was the perfect opportunity that enabled that transition. In the beginning, Xveris wanted to leverage my training in predictive analytics to develop in-house marketing mix modeling. And actually, as my first project, I had to quickly learn and use one of the first machine language driven MMM platforms. It was called Concentric, to build models, conduct forecasting and attribution, which we did for a few years until the pandemic, when a lot of brands shied away from using MMM, thinking that the models that were based on pre-pandemic data did not apply to the drastic changes that we saw during the pandemic. So we discontinued running MMM in-house, and sadly, that Concentric platform also did not survive the pandemic. But as you know, MMM has made a pretty strong comeback in the last few years. And currently, I oversee analytics at Xveris, including tracking and reporting of campaign delivery and performance, online dashboards, and other reports, and managing third-party measurement, like brand lift studies, multi-touch attribution, and marketing mix modeling. So that's how I came to where I am.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely familiar with Merit Research, and it seems like a good transition to take your experience there and apply it into the advertising space. And you mentioned a lot about MMM and ad strategy, and that's our first topic. So let's dig into that a little further. MMM's definitely made a comeback with respect to ad strategies. I'd love to have you share your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so for those unfamiliar, MMM is an analysis technique that relies on statistics, econometrics, and historical data to quantify the relationships between marketing factors and sales into a model that can be used to forecast sales and analyze the efficiency and effectiveness of marketing tactics. And MMM can play an important role in the development of ad strategy and planning in several ways. First, it can be used to determine what media budget is needed to achieve a sales target, or whether or not the target is achievable at all. It can be used to identify the optimal media mix and the flighting for that media. And then you can estimate both the short-term and long-term impact of marketing on sales. So as I mentioned earlier, there seems to be a resurgence of MMM in recent years as we see new providers and platforms popping up all over. And this is probably driven by a couple of factors. And one of these factors is that marketers are looking for solutions to get around growing barriers to consumer tracking. And these can be, the increasing privacy regulations and cookie deprecation. And a lot of platforms, social platforms in particular, out-of-home radio and linear TV are difficult or impossible to track due to just policies or just the data that's available. And so unlike other sales measurement or attribution solutions like multi-touch attribution or sales lift studies, which require one-to-one tracking of consumers to conversions, marketing mix modeling doesn't need that. The way that works is it's based on the link between marketing and sales using statistical relationships or data patterns over time. Therefore, it can measure pretty much any marketing tactic and get around the tracking obstacles that other solutions have. And the other big factor for the resurgence of MMM is technological advances in recent years, especially the improved machine learning and automated processing that enables MMM to be more accessible, reducing the costs and the time that it takes to do these projects. I would say years ago, maybe around 8 years ago or so, when I first started, it was mostly the larger brands who can afford hundreds of thousands of dollars to commission an MMM project using a major provider like MMA or Newstar, and the projects can take 4 or 5 months or longer to implement. But nowadays, a lot of MMM providers can do projects for less than 100,000 or even closer to 50,000, and timelines can be as short as 8 weeks or shorter. So, I think beyond just talking about how MMM has resurfaced and has grown in popularity, I'd like to talk a little bit about how to use MMM successfully. and some of the challenges associated with this tool. So using MMM successfully can be challenging, especially for younger brands. First of all, not all brands are ready to implement MMM. The biggest obstacle is usually not having sufficient historical marketing data. And ideally, you need about 2 years of data in the media channels that you're considering in your ad strategy. And a lot of younger companies simply don't have that accumulated. And choosing a good MMM vendor or platform capable of developing a working model can also be challenging. You need a model that provides the types of outputs and analyses that fit your specific needs of your client's business. You might need regional breakdowns. You might need to understand how the channels work together and flight optimization. And not all platforms offer these kinds of outputs. So choosing the right one can be a bit tricky. And also, if you don't have an internal data scientist or seasoned analyst that is trained in modeling, I would probably advise using a marketing mix modeling vendor that has strong analytical and domain expertise, because developing a good model is, they kind of say it's kind of an art and a science, and it requires a deep understanding of modeling technique as well as the specific brand's marketing dynamics. And a lot of judgment calls have to be made, which I don't believe that there's currently a one-size-fits-all automated platform for MMM that is capable of making all of these decisions. So having that expertise, that human expertise, is really important, especially when you're starting out with MMM.
So Charles, let me ask you though, with the increased volume of data tracking that we have now, different capabilities and different channels, and so many, companies are tracking so much more data now, and the tools available to do that, the tools available to access machine learning models, to process that data easier. Do you think we're getting to the point where it's going to become easier, less expensive for companies to be able to deploy MMM strategies? Are we going to get to the point where all of this and AI will help sort of make it easier and more accessible to more companies, rather than, like you said, historically, it may cost $100,000 and maybe today you can do it for $50,000. Are we going to get to the point where it's going to be like $5,000 and pretty much anybody with an e-commerce site can do it? What do you think?
Well, I do think that technology and AI is helping. And it is getting less expensive. I doubt it's ever going to get down to $5,000. But at this point in time, the technology is not quite there where it's able to compensate and replace the decision making that's required for building the good model. But right now it is able to automate a lot of the data cleaning and processing and data ingestion that does take a lot of time and is very costly to do. And that is why the cost has come down. But one of the pitfalls that I see quite a bit these days is you may have a MMM platform that has good technology, but do not have an understanding of the domain expertise required. You can't just push a button and create a good model. You have to specify and define the tactics very carefully. You have to have a good understanding of each business, each brand's customer journey, to make sure that, because MMM, you're dealing with generalizations, and you need to make sure that the generalizations are meaningful to your business. Social media in one context for one business in a certain execution may not mean the same thing for another company and another campaign. And those are important distinctions and nuances that are not easily captured in a technological platform, and something that a seasoned expert would be able to account for. So I would say I think one day AI may be able to help make all of these decisions. I think we're still ways off, but I'm looking forward to all of these improvements. But I think we're probably halfway there.
Yeah, it's just amazing how fast things happen these days, because I often refer back to one of our early episodes. I had a conversation with somebody about how someday, and remember, like, we've been doing this podcast for over 2 years. So and back then we said, oh, someday you'll be able to just, type in or tell the computer what you want, and it'll, write a program to do it. And now we're there, and now there's literally AIs out there where you can say, hey, I need an app that will do this, that, and the other thing. And all of a sudden it writes all the code. And then it runs, maybe a simplified version of what you asked it to do, but it wrote the code, And so it's really crazy how we had that conversation on this podcast. And we're like, someday, and literally, I think it was less than a year later, we were like, oh my gosh, like, this is not happening now. And so, when we have these conversations and you and I are talking about, yeah, maybe someday AI will make it easier for MMM to be able to do, people to do MMM, sort of ad hoc on the fly, mark our words, maybe a year from now, we'll be having another conversation and saying, wow, now we can do it. So,
yeah. And a lot of platforms and vendors definitely claim to be able to do it, and even ChatGPT say they can do it, and the trick is always doing it well and making sure that the output is meaningful, reasonable, and usable. I don't think we're quite there, but I do see us getting there sometime in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
You still need a human to make a really good prompt, though. But, moving on a little bit from mixed modeling and into tracking multi-channel ad brand impact. Could you talk to us a little bit about this, Charles?
Yes. So one of the most important questions that we need to address as an advertising agency is how a campaign impacts key outcomes such as sales, brand awareness, or brand perception. For impact on sales, we could use a tool like MMM, as we have been discussing, or other tools like multi-touch attribution. But today, what I want to focus on is how we can measure brand metrics, which is particularly important for campaigns that are focused on upper funnel branding. And brand metrics, what we're talking about is brand awareness, favorability, advocacy. And these are metrics that are difficult to measure because you either have to ask the consumer directly or use indirect behavioral indicators such as branded search or social listening tool to gauge public chatter. There's no perfect solution. However, our preference at Xveris is to take more of a scientific approach. We like to use a test and control study, what we often refer to as brand lift survey studies. And this is a study where people who are exposed to ads are compared to a control group that has not been exposed to ads, but are matched to the control group. And this methodology enables us to isolate the impact of media by controlling for other factors that could be impacting the metrics like brand perception. Therefore, if there was some kind of market event that can influence brand perception, like negative press, negative news article, or a viral video that might improve brand perception, this can be accounted for in a brand lift study, as it should affect both groups equally. And other measurement approaches, such as looking at brand search trends or social listening, or even a brand equity tracking study that usually does not account for media exposure. These approaches cannot account for the marketing factors, so you can't isolate the impact of a media campaign as accurately. But even though the brand lift studies are probably the most valid way to measure ad impact, they're still far from perfect, and they face some pretty significant challenges. And one of these challenges is determining ad exposure. And the way this is commonly done is through a pixel that is placed on an ad creative, a way to digitally track whether or not somebody actually saw an ad. And this is not possible to do on a lot of platforms. Most social media platforms do not allow this. You can't do it on YouTube, and you certainly can't do it on TV or radio or out of home. So usually the solution here is what they called an opportunity to see methodology, where we ask people survey questions about their media consumption, and then we match that data to when and where media was aired. But in our experience, OTS works well for some channels like TV and radio, but does not work very well for social advertising, and can often lead to unclear or unexpected results. And a good example of this is we might even see, those people exposed to ads having lower awareness than the control group, which is not what we want to see.
That's fascinating, just like how much science can go behind advertising and marketing.
Yeah, and but science is messy and tricky,
It
and
sure is.
challenging, and it depends on the data, which data is often just, there's error, there's you rely on self-report, people answering questions, there's bound to be just low quality answers is what we like to call them. So yeah, it's not perfect, but another major challenge associated with doing these studies is what we call cross-channel contamination, which is also related to the ad exposure issue. And the idea is that we're trying to compare people that were exposed to advertising versus people that were not. But sometimes we can't track, for whatever reason, whether someone was exposed to an ad. So in a sense, the control group was exposed to advertising, and that kind of invalidates the study. And lastly, we're assuming in this methodology that the control group and the people that are exposed group, the test group, are exactly the same, except for their exposure to ads. But this is not easy to ensure that both groups are the same. They usually try to do this through what they call sample matching. And so they would match people based on demographics, geography, or their online behaviors. But it's not foolproof. And sometimes you will have control groups that are not really the same as your test group, and that can lead to unexpected and unreliable results. So, I mean, in short, these are probably the best option, but they're still subject to chance and, to error. And so what we recommend usually is to also consider and incorporate other data sources to see how well they corroborate with the brand lift results, especially if the brand lift results are unexpected or unclear. So an example is if your study shows no lift from advertising, saying that the advertising didn't do anything, but your sales is way up and your branded search is way up, then you probably have a good reason to discount the study a bit, saying maybe it was a fluke, maybe there was just a chance event that we got a bad result. But if all the other indicators, your sales and search results are flat, then you might be more inclined to accept these results.
Well, that's great that Xveris is, dedicated to getting into this in-depth science behind it, because, not all companies are willing to put in the time and the effort to truly study and, make hypotheses and be wrong. So it's really great that, you're digging into it. And it seems like even with the limitations of the research, you're being very real about them and, finding ways to somewhat address them.
Yeah, and I think with data and measurement, it's always important to understand its limitations and to make sure you're using it appropriately. And there's rarely a silver bullet and a source that is 100% accurate. And so we tend to want to look at multiple sources of information, multiple sources of data. This is the same with the MMM results as well. Not all models are great. Models tend to evolve over time. Especially when you're starting out, the results may not look the way that you want, so the confidence level may not be very high. And I think it's always important in making complex decisions, whether it be formulating your advertising strategy or evaluating the performance of your campaigns, that you take into account multiple sources of information and rely on experts as well to make the best decisions.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely.
And AI. I'm just kidding. But
Speaking of
don't rely on AI too much.
Speaking of AI, and that's our next topic.
Exactly. Let's get into it. So AI tools, capabilities, and limitations. So we've been talking there about limitations. Could you kick us off on AI tools?
Sure. So AI seems to be everywhere these days. And aside from the LLMs, they also seem to be creeping up in various other applications, in our BI tools, in our analysis platforms, multi-touch attribution, MMM platforms. I've seen them in all of these types of platforms. I'm very excited and impressed to see this, and with the general capabilities of LLMs and how much they have advanced. But I also tend to view them with some skepticism. It's pretty clear that AI is helping to automate more and more processes and improving the speed and efficiency of analytic tasks. But I think that in order for them to be useful, they also have to be used carefully. I think we have all seen inaccurate results and bad outputs from LM, and using them the right way, prompting them the right way, and also checking the outputs frequently is critical to using them effectively. So from an analytic point of view, and based on the types of tasks that we have to deal with in analytics, we found that AI and the LLMs in particular have worked pretty well with certain tasks, particularly with data cleaning, restructuring, writing scripts on certain platforms, and also with text analysis. You can upload some text comment data and really just walk the LLM and do a decent analysis with just that approach, which is pretty amazing. um, you know uh, but on the other hand, I also feel like AI is not quite advanced enough to fully replace what a senior data analysts or data scientists can do. And the level of inaccuracies is still relatively high. Just to give you an example, ChatGPT actually claims to be able to do a full marketing mix modeling analysis. And we've tried testing that on the platform with a couple of data sets, and it will guide you through the entire process of doing one. But in our experience, to get it to produce sensible results is quite challenging unless the input data is just right. And which is, that's rarely the case in a real project. So I think we're still a ways off on something like that. And the AI chatbots, the add-ons, the applications, so far also seem more gimmicky than useful from our experience. I would tend to play with them for a bit and then tend to go back to the main features on the UI for analysis. But with that said, I think that the AI advancements are happening very quickly, and I do think that they will get to the point of replacing the larger scale analytics tasks and even entire projects. And we kind of hit on that a bit earlier as well. But even now, I find that the LLMs in particular can be very useful for boosting productivity and efficiency. Aside from the data cleaning, structuring, and scripting tasks that I mentioned, they could often offer a good starting point or framework for different assignments in analytics or in investigation. And this is, I think, especially if you have an analyst that is less experienced and doesn't quite know where to start on an assignment, just using LLM could get them a ways there. I think the trick is, you can't rely on it blindly. You need to pull in a human expert as well to make sure that things are going right. And then again, just a lot of checking is required to make things work.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point in the sense that, yeah, there's a lot of cool things that you can do with AI today. But I also think that we're in the middle of this like crazy AI boom, just like there was a, blockchain boom, and just like there was a .com boom way back when, like where all the money is being thrown into AI right now. And so if you can just create like this MVP that does something that looks cool and uses AI, then maybe you can raise a whole bunch of money, and maybe you can then turn it into something real. And I think there's a lot of that going on. So that's why there's like thousands and thousands of AI tools out there right now. And some of them will eventually turn into something and grow and be real, and so many more of them will probably just slowly disappear. And others will, the ones that can advance and become more real will eventually survive. But there's just so many out there, and everybody's just trying to create something. And it almost doesn't matter. I hate to say this, it almost doesn't matter if it fully works or not. Nobody really cares right now. They're just like, oh, well, it almost works and it's kind of cool. And if we can, just grow it and put some money into it, we can make it even better. And people are raising money based on just that theory. And so, yeah, I think we're in an AI boom, and I think at some point it'll sort of burst, and only the real tools that really perform and really get built out will survive.
I am a little concerned about whether or not people, the consumers, I do agree that the tech companies putting the money into investing in this. They don't really care if it works perfectly right now.
Yeah.
But I am a bit concerned that, with the amount of bad outputs and accurate outputs, and a lot of this is based on just bad prompts or user error or whatever. But I do, see the potential that people may attach a negative connotation to AI if there's enough bad output out there, and that AI. I'm one of the optimists and definitely think that it's going to get much better, but there's also potential for people to be disenchanted with AI and maybe associate AI with bad quality output. And we don't want that. And I think, hopefully that's not going to be the case. But that does seem to be a bit of a concern from what I've seen.
Yeah, I think it's a real risk, and I think you're absolutely right. I personally feel like that's what happened with the blockchain. I think that everybody looked at the blockchain and thought, oh, everything can be on the blockchain, but then a lot of stuff was just vaporware, and so then everybody started to back off and said, I don't know, that doesn't really work, or this doesn't really make any sense, and so a lot of stuff just got dropped and thrown away because I think the general public just stopped believing in it. Because a lot of it was just vaporware back then. So there's definitely a risk of that happening with AI as well.
Yeah, AI has to be careful. They have a reputation of being like evil from like stories in the 80s and stuff, right?
Sure. And,
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
very interesting. But before we go, there's a topic we ask all of our guests that we have to make sure we ask you. And you already shared, a little bit about AI tools, but just in general, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack?
Okay. Well, with my skepticism of LMs, ChatGPT and Gemini are one of two of my favorite tools that I engage with. I think ChatGPT seems more sophisticated, can do a lot more at this point from what I've seen. But Gemini seems to have more recent updated data and can provide really intelligent searches if you're investigating, looking for things that are more recent. Another tool that we recently are testing at our agency is a search tool called My Telescope, which is a search data aggregator that pulls data from most major platforms where searches occur, including Google, Bing, YouTube, Amazon, etc. And it's a great tool for analyzing brand awareness, competitive share of voice. We're just exploring it now, but we're pretty excited about it right now.
That's interesting. I haven't heard that one. Cool.
I've heard a lot about Gemini. I haven't tried it. Have you tried it, David?
Yeah, I've pretty much tried all of them. I really like, I prefer Claude and Perplexity.
Yeah, I hear a lot about Claude. I'm really into ChatGPT, but I might have to try out Claude. All interesting stuff. Well, thank you so much for sharing some of your favorite tools in your tech stack, Charles. And in closing, would you like to let listeners know how they could find you if they wanted to reach out after the show?
You can find me on LinkedIn as well as Experis Media, and you can follow at Experis on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, awesome. This has been a great conversation, Charles. We really appreciate you joining us today, and look forward to chatting again sometime. And I'll let Jesse close us out.
All right. And I will do just that. I'll pull up our QR code. So if you're watching on video, you can scan the QR code, head on over to BeatX's website. But of course, if you're listening to this on podcast, just go to beatx.com. And we want to invite you to get powered by BeatX and build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing this power of AI that we talk about all the time here to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing hits the mark every time. So we want to bring you closer to that and to your marketing goals. So we're eager to guide you. You just have to visit beatx.com and click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered with BeatX. Also, for anyone who knows anyone, or if you think you would be a great guest on the show, please send us your name or your contact's name to info@bdex.com. And also, if you have any feedback about the show, we would love to hear your thoughts. Go ahead and send them our way. Again, that's info@bdex.com. You can share your qualitative data with us so we can make it better for you. But thanks again for joining, Charles.
Great. Thank you for having me on.
Of
Absolutely.
course.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.